Many viewers have looked to The Andy Griffith Show as a source of solace for many years, where there was genuine joy, simplicity of living and a sense of belonging. That was Mayberry. It seems unlikely that there have been any other one-camera presentations with a similar tone. A child, in my opinion, would not use such exact words. I felt like I belonged there. What if, however, we revealed that odd secrets, on-set mysteries and hidden truths were subtly at work behind those innocent scenes? The youngster who portrayed Opie, Ron Howard, has spoken out about something that the majority of fans missed. Did the Mayberry gang make any spectral mistakes? Did the popular characters have more complicated backstories? Maybe Mayberry wasn't as idyllic as we thought it was. The seemingly perfect display is having its veil pulled back today. That is, until today. Those indiscretions you were blind to. The Andy Griffith Show is television heaven for the vast majority of people. Generations of viewers have found comfort in the show's endearing simplicity and mild humour. Although the presentation appeared perfect on the outside, there were many production quirks and small errors that went unnoticed by the majority of viewers. These hitherto unseen gaffes have been brought to light by Ron Howard's introspections and the observant eyes of devoted fans re-watching the programme in high definition, exposing a Mayberry where good storytelling and lightning-fast thinking were equally important. One peculiar instance in point is the appearance of Rance Howard, Ron Howard's real-life father, in cameo parts. An iconic episode features Rance's character abruptly disappearing mid-scene. Just waiting in the courtroom, he's right there, a part of it all, and just like that he disappears. The audience seemed perplexed. However, the reality behind the scenes was considerably less enigmatic and more kind. Ron claims that his father had to be whisked away in the middle of filming due to a family emergency. There was no time to reshoot or explain, so the scenario went on without him, creating an awkward moment that careful viewers can't help but talk about. However, this marked the very start. Like the one with the window, which was meant to break but instead fluttered like paper in a breeze due to the incredibly fragile nature of some of those sets, The Andy Griffith Show was a treasure trove of little gaffes that could only be noticed by the most perceptive viewer. Alternatively, there's the dramatic one when Barney's motorbike sidecar seems to come loose. Most people watching at the time didn't notice the wooden block because it was employed as a support under the whole gag. Then there were the charming but occasionally embarrassing human mistakes. Hands that don't belong to any character appear in more than one scene, doing things like closing doors, changing props, or even helping with stunts. A dubbed line that Goober inserted later on without trying to replicate the original performance made him famous for appearing to speak without moving his lips. Additionally, in Aunt Bee Learns to Drive, the stunt double was disguised by placing a hat on the driver in an effort to keep it from being noticed by the audience. That obviously bombs in today's replay. In Mayberry, there was always a smudge like this that could draw in viewers thanks to the show's endearing characters, humorous dialogue and patriotic themes. These slip-ups would have provided a fascinating look into early television if it hadn't been so many years later. Get over any hiccups with the use of practical effects that are edited in a flash and magic storytelling. The programme had its flaws, but those flaws contributed to the show's authenticity. Plus, as time passes, fans realise that these fleeting moments truly do have a narrative to tell. As we'll see, real-life relationships that went outside the virtual realm frequently served to bind these disparate elements together. Opie Taylor, the freckle-faced, wide-eyed child who won America's heart on The Andy Griffith Show, will be remembered by many fans as played by Ron Howard. Both his performance and his friendship with Andy Griffith are etched in television history as legendary figures. Andy was like a wonderful uncle to me, Howard reflected on those years while speaking to People magazine in 1986. He established the tone of pleasure and hard work that I strive to achieve in my films. Howard would go on to become an award-winning director who consistently incorporated Griffith's aesthetic into his work, thanks in large part to the formative experiences he had as an actor. This naive persona belied a young actor whose upbringing by his family, particularly Rance Howard, had a profound impact on his time spent performing. What many viewers didn't know is that the Howard family was heavily involved in both the production and the running of the show. It wasn't as if Ron was only memorizing lines. Even though the cameras were rolling, he was learning acting, narrative and professionalism from his dad the hard way. Though he didn't have a regular part, Rance Howard had several notable appearances in episodes. What Rance did best for his son during those early years was act as a role model and counsellor. At what could have been an intimidatingly busy television set, young Ron felt more at ease and familiar with his father's presence. Their kinship, however, transcended mere solace. Lead by example, Rance did. Ron subtly picked up his professionalism and concentration whenever he entered a scene. While filming the series, differences in their connections stood out. Some episodes include Rance's on-screen persona making an appearance in the courtroom alongside other members of the community. Unfortunately, an emergency off-set forced him to depart suddenly during scene shooting. That apparently did not take place in a controlled environment, nor was it intended as a strategic blocking move. Rather, it occurred as it actually occurred. It brought attention to the unique difficulties of juggling work and family during a live performance, and it also led to a humorous continuity omission that dedicated viewers can still remember. A deep appreciation for narrative and teamwork was ingrained in Ron throughout his childhood years spent working with his father, an experience he frequently attributes. Ron did not have stage parents who were eager to see their son become famous, unlike many of his fellow child actors of the time. But his dad was an industry expert who wanted to teach his son by doing, who stressed the importance of hard effort, and who understood the industry. His parts were minor, and his contributions were understated, but they had a profound impact on Ron's perspective on acting as a trade, the significance of preparation, and the skill of combining humility with performance. Rance was clearly not involved to steal the show or outshine his son. Beyond specific scenes, Ron gleaned life lessons from seeing his father, fortitude, the times when Rance had to bail out of a shoot before it was over, composure in the face of adversity, and the brotherhood that exists on set, during which all members of the team, from the main characters to the backup cast, contributed to the creation of something significant. The hallmark of Ron's career, both as an actor and a director, was his early exposure to collaboration. Watching the Andy Griffith program may easily transport viewers to a world where real-life events take a back seat to the fantastical events shown on the show. But it becomes clear that what actually happened during the run wasn't a show once one starts to notice how family is woven into the production. Mayberry was really more of a family affair than anything else. Even when Rance Howard made cameo appearances, the impact of his family remained. Actually, it allowed for more genuine moments of spontaneity and mistake, which added depth to the show's human element, so cementing its status as an enduring masterpiece. The town of Mayberry as a delusion. At first glance, Mayberry appeared to be the idyllic village that everyone dreamed of calling home. There was tranquility there. Nobody ever locked their doors. Everyone knew their neighbour's name, and Sheriff Andy Taylor could fix any problem with only a word of encouragement. However, the Andy Griffith programme was actually an elaborate illusion, despite its seeming simplicity and endearing personality, held together by astute scripting, rigorous filming timelines, and the enchantment of television editing. The multitude of flaws, errors, and contradictions concealed beneath that picture-perfect small-town persona remained a mystery to the majority of followers. The recent contemplations of Ron Howard have further illuminated the precarious nature of the illusion. The fact that Mayberry's flawless performance on screen was constructed using techniques that didn't necessarily hold up under closer inspection was one of the most intriguing parts about it. The town's iconic appearance was achieved with sets that seemed like solid structures, but in reality they were frequently only painted flats and plywood facades. A misstep or an unexpected gust of wind would expose their fragility. At times, cement sidewalks would encircle dirt tracks that gave the impression of well-worn, authentic streets. Caught in the story's engrossment, most spectators failed to notice the odd visual discrepancy. The show's low-budget, fast-paced production was further shown by its props and set pieces. Even though they were supposed to be glass, the windows shattered like paper. It seemed like the size and shape of buildings changed from one episode to the next. Vehicles, too, appeared to be living beings. In one iconic scene, an automobile swung erratically between frames, as if it were possessed. These were hardly insignificant mistakes. The picture-perfect hamlet of Mayberry, they served as a constant reminder, was a product of the intellect and the artist's meticulous attention to detail. The fact that viewers don't seem to mind these flaws just adds to the show's allure. The fans were more interested in the spectacle than in the craft's technical aspect. They wanted to meet the beloved characters and feel the soft humour that helped fill the story. Even the legendary Ron Howard learned to roll with the punches and make do. Keep on, even if a prop broke or a set piece malfunctioned. Everything that wasn't perfect wasn't crucial to the performance. What made Mayberry seem real were genuine emotions and actions. Perhaps that's why it has lasted for so long. Outside of the actual sets, the illusion persisted. It seemed as though the outside world had never set foot in Mayberry, a socially responsible hamlet that seemed immune to the societal upheavals of the 1960s. Within the studio walls, the world was constantly changing, but the actors and crew were well informed. That idealized picture of Mayberry as a haven of peace and quiet was still false, one that calmed the nerves of an anxious audience. Despite its apparent flaws, Mayberry represents a sentimental ideal. The production flaws and technical errors that viewers may still see in reruns and on streaming services now do not diminish that heritage. To the contrary, they enrich the town's reality in some way, the town's humanity, since that is all there is to it, in the end. The imperfect Mayberry was reflective of the people who create it, the good, the ugly, and their improvisations, just like all places should be. Viewers' perceptions of Mayberry were impacted by those flaws as well. They opened the door for unexpected comedic and human moments on set as well. These were the kinds of moments that would shape the show's tone in ways the writers could never have imagined. Secrets from Ron's own childhood. Opie Taylor, played by Ron Howard, was the adored son of Sheriff Andy Taylor and the show's protagonist, and millions of viewers will always remember him as the innocent, wide-eyed Opie. There was a considerably more complicated childhood than what most viewers could have guessed behind that innocent appearance. Growing up on television came with sacrifices, difficulties, and secrets that seldom reached the public view, even though Ron seemed to exemplify the ideal all-American youngster on show. Over the past few years, Ron Howard has provided some real insight into what it was like to grow up under Mayberry's meticulously crafted spotlight. Also, some shocking revelations have come to light. Long hours, high expectations, and continual pressure to succeed characterized Ron's actual youth, in contrast to Opie's idyllic days spent fishing with his dad, going to school, or playing in a small town. The entertainment industry has been Ron's lifeblood since he was a little boy. Acting was more than simply a pastime or something to do in one's spare time. It was a career, one that demanded self-restraint that was out of his element. Ron was busy trying to figure out how to function in an adult setting, memorizing scripts and hitting marks, all while his friends were playing in parks or learning to ride bikes. He grew up on the Andy Griffith Show set, which served as his home away from home, as well as his classroom and playground. However, it was never completely unfettered. How fortunate was I to have grown up in that staged environment, to take part, offer recommendations, Howard remembered, stressing that he was comfortable expressing his opinions even as a youngster. Most fans had no idea how much pressure being a kid star put on the star. He wasn't the only one who had to shoulder the weight of producers and directors. Viewers also needed to believe they were meeting the character in person. Opie remained the same everywhere he went. The innocent, kind-hearted lad whose admirers had an open-ended crush on. That portrayal could be both a blessing and a little too much at times. Off-screen, Ron did in fact feel immense pressure to be that at times. His desire for a typical life was one of Ron's most well-guarded secrets. He was passionate about performing and adored his co-stars, but there were moments when he wished he could just be a normal kid. He longed for independence, the chance to meet people outside of the entertainment world and the chance to discover his true identity outside his on-screen persona. There were very few opportunities, though. Ron was usually either practicing for his next job, attending promotional events, or getting ready for a forthcoming episode when he wasn't filming. A great deal of his life had already been planned out, leaving little room for the unexpected. Since both of Ron Howard's parents were performers, they were very concerned about protecting him from the negative aspects of stardom. Some works, such as The Andy Griffith Show, have credited his father, Rance Howard. In addition to instilling in him the principles that would serve as a foundation, his mother, Jean, provides him with unwavering emotional support, has not been spared the emotional weight of affection that comes with being a public person at that age, no matter how their parents handle it. Incredible as it may seem, Ron was able to transform the challenges he faced as a child into qualities he possessed as an adult. And it wasn't just Ron who had those unseen battles. They reflected the unassuming selflessness of his co-stars, sacrifices that viewers didn't anticipate would shape their time on the show. The authenticity of the Andy Griffith Show was due to more than simply the script and the actors. And the more script the conversation was due to the delicate behind-the-scenes procedures were responsible for giving Mayberry a life that viewers could never have imagined. There was a combination of staging, practical effects, and good old-fashioned production magic in every show that enchanted viewers and made them believe that Mayberry was an actual town. The seamless universe that fans came to love was woven using these tactics, which weren't always showy. The crew's ability to pull off seemingly effortless comic situations is a prime illustration of this television magic trick. There were meticulously planned physical humour scenes, such as Barney's regular encounters with broken machinery, complete with hidden cables, off-camera hands, or items meant to break at the precise moment on one occasion. It wasn't a coincidence that Barney's motorbike sidecar suddenly detached. Everything was carefully planned, even down to the hidden supports that gave the impression of a natural collapse. Because they were staged to look unintentional, these moments felt genuine. Animal tricks also required exact choreographic staging, but they captivated audiences with their illusions. Aunt Bee, the Crusaders' world-famous drunk chicken, is a prime illustration of this. Although it is implied in the plot that the chicken had gotten into the moonshine, the reality was somewhat less risque. For example, to make it look like the chicken was drunk and wobbling, the crew tied a small, almost invisible thread to its head and gently tugged it away from the camera. In this way, it served as proof that straightforward solutions could provide hours of entertainment without ever incorporating a real drunk animal, and it was entertaining as well as convincing. In order to hide the mistakes or imply a physical relationship, it made extensive use of deft editing. There are a lot of cases where someone appears to be acting spontaneously on screen. However, it is actually composited from multiple takes or enhanced by non-camera signals. Among the many examples of the cacophony within is the Great House. What a well-trained ear could detect is this. When Barney hears what seems like the director beckoning to Don Knotts, he springs out of his hiding place to catch two cops off guard. It appeared like a mechanical problem when Barney rode his sidecar motorcycle, but it was actually a deliberate maneuver involving strategically placed wooden blocks that would cause the sidecar to collapse, adding to the humorous effect. Help was extended to both the actors and inanimate objects or animal characters on occasion. Despite the Kanuki audience's confession that they were witnessing Goober or Aunt Bee, producers would covertly use stand-ins for physical sequences when faced with distractions. Along with Aunt Bee's learn to drive moment, the filmmakers tried to hide a stunt lady under a big hat so that viewers wouldn't make the astute observation about how obvious the stunt double was. It was easy to see why the crowd were utterly swayed. Amazing as these illusions were, they weren't the sole unspoken realities that shaped Andy Griffith's program. An additional depth of complexity that viewers did not anticipate was exposed by the performer's personal life, particularly their struggles with the constraints of popularity behind the scenes. Connections and disintegrations. On the other hand, the Andy Griffith Show portrayed a society where people got along well, laughed gently, and had clear moral principles. There were a lot more layers to life behind the scenes. The cast's friendship was genuine, but so were the conflicts, personal challenges, and emotional burden of weekly sustaining Mayberry's allure for millions of viewers. Most people didn't realise that the show's popularity hinged not only on the writers' and producers' ingenuity, but also on the intricate and ultimately human interactions between them. Andy Griffith and Don Knotts' friendship was important to it. The natural chemistry between Sheriff Taylor and Deputy Barney Fife was built on real fondness and mutual regard outside of the set. Griffith greatly admired Knotts' careful planning and perfect timing, and the two became good friends. Griffith's steady hand was a lifeline for Knotts, which needed someone to steady the ship among the mayhem of television production. The 70-year-old posted a throwback Instagram photo on February 15th, featuring himself, Andy Griffith, and Don Knotts, who starred with him on The Andy Griffith Show, back in the 90s, adding a message that read, "A fun photo of the day in 1997 when hashtag Andy Griffith and hashtag Don Knott surprised me with a visit to the set of hashtag Ransom in hashtag Queens." He captioned the happy snapshot. The photo of the three happy men was captioned by Howard. Don and I were actually found out to be distant relatives not long ago. They collaborated on scenes that cleverly combined slapstick with emotion, frequently inventing small elements that added to the humour while maintaining authenticity. However, there were still challenges with this relationship. Despite receiving rave reviews, Knotts, known to be overly self-conscious about his work, would frequently question his own abilities. He was so committed to keeping up the high quality that viewers had grown to anticipate that he would spend hours upon hours going over screenplays and dailies, even though this perfectionism occasionally left him feeling weary. And the central character, the youngster Ron Howard, played a special role in Mayberry's imaginary universe. Instead of being the carefree youngster his admirers thought he would be, young Ron struggled to meet the high expectations placed on him as a breakout star, while also juggling the demands of school and filming. Even with their best efforts, Ran's parents, particularly his father, Rance Howard, who made guest appearances on the show, were unable to prevent him from experiencing the harmful consequences of stardom at such a tender age. There were deeper divisions on the programme, despite the major cast's joyful commitment. Although he had created countless endearing expressions throughout his 5 years on the job, Don Knotts' departure marked a significant artistic setback. Nonetheless, Griffith felt a heavy emotional hit. It was a cordial arrangement, but neither the writers nor Griffith could have adequately compensated for the loss. Even though the show's popularity remained high, the new comedic balance took away from the enchantment that had been there in earlier, much-loved seasons. Griffith went on to say that working without Knotts wasn't the same because it broke the smooth rhythm they had built, which was sensed by everyone. Working long hours under the pressure of a tight production schedule was also taxing. Even while everyone on set was generally nice, there were a few moments when tensions were building. With the clock ticking and the pressure to maintain the Mayberry image, the cast and crew must have felt like they had little time to deal with their own personal problems. A number of cast members suffered from anxiety, depression, marital strife, and general exhaustion from trying to live up to an unrealistic standard of perfection. Like these relationships, the show's secret production tricks, from behind-the-scenes wizardry to sleight-of-hand gags, were instrumental in creating the Mayberry that millions of viewers loved. The history. Presenting today is Ron Howard. Lots of people see the Andy Griffith Show as a timeless representation of small-town goodness, simplicity and warmth. But for the little boy who lived on those well-known Mayberry streets, Ron Howard, the show's impact continued long after the shutters came down. It trailed after him, moulding him, and subtly impacted his journey from child star to revered director in Hollywood. What most fans didn't know was that Howard's early years laid the groundwork for the principles and lessons that would shape his work for years to come. Ron learned more than just his lines, even when he was a young performer. Being in the company of true experts like Francis Bavier, Andy Griffith and Don Knotts allowed him to see the results of teamwork, mutual regard and commitment to one's work. He witnessed the power of subtle and biting humour, the universal appeal of character-driven narratives, and the ability of a set, even one based on illusions, to evoke a sense of family. With these lessons in mind, he shifted his focus from performing in front of the camera to directing from behind it. Even in his final films, Mayberry's characteristic warmth and honesty reverberated. Ron, the cameraman, would unavoidably be captivated by both the technical aspects and the gorgeous light and shadow of Mayberry. Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and Cinderella Man are as far from a quiet North Carolina town as you can get. Despite this, the films share a respect for decency and a strength to persevere in the face of adversity. Howard often talks about how his formative years shaped his empathy and storytelling style. The heart and humour that were the foundation of Andy Griffith's show became hallmarks of his directing technique. Actually, continuing that heritage has not been easy. Ron Howard silently toiled for a large portion of his adult life to view himself apart from Mayberry, despite their affection and respect for Opie Taylor. He recalls that time in his life with great pleasure. On the other hand, he notes that there are difficulties in shedding such a pervasive social perception. He has to be patient, persistent, and determined not to let his history define him as he slogs his way from beloved child performer to serious filmmaker. Today, Ron is remembered for more than just a television show or character. He is remembered for a moral perspective that acknowledges complexity without glossing over it. Years of consistent effort, on and off set, have moulded it into a subtle power. His demeanour exemplifies that of a man who values listening above speaking. When he does talk, though, people pay attention. He has an uncommon sincerity about him that helps others feel safe, acknowledged and valued. Fans recall more than just his acting parts. Their emotions in those roles are still fresh in their minds. At a time when genuineness seems scarce, Ron gives it to us unabashedly. Like, subscribe and hit that bell icon if you enjoyed this in-depth look into vintage TV. If you didn't want to miss any future episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, we have only scratched the surface of what's going on behind the scenes of our favourite shows. In the comments, please share your preferred blunder, mistake or obscure fact. Perhaps something has been slipping your mind all this time. What astonished you the most? We love hearing about it, but hold off for now. View the following video for more shocking facts and behind-the-scenes tales about the golden age of television. If you want to know more interesting facts about the TV icons of yesteryear, you should stay tuned.